Well, I've been looking at this week. Let's see. My first thought, let's just look at the hat. I really love, gotta check it, make sure you can see this. I really love this area. I really love this area of the hat, the way it gets lost into the background. And I love this little bit of blue on this crisp edge, and then it fades out down here, and this color is also the color that's up in here that's making the shadow. And then we got that fuzzy little bit of feather here. So I'm going to tackle that area first. And the first thing I look at, what I had you do too last time, is that I've made a hard crisp edge here. I also drew a little shape in there for that feather, which that's going to mess with that nice fuzzy edge. So here's what let's do. And this is a reminder also, there's all kinds of times when you just would like to modify a little area and make it just a little better. Use this magic eraser. So let's see if the colors I've used want to come up, because I'm not sure if they do. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to gently, oh yeah, look at that. Look at that, gently lift and come up here. All right, good. In fact, that even moves some of that color along over here. Let's find a clean spot here. A lot of the time, you can lift those pencil, or not pencil lines, those transfer lines. I'm gonna hit it kind of hard here. Okay, that got most of it. I have managed to keep this area right up here dry, because I want that crisp edge. Let's see how much of this we can do. Now, I have the color from last week. Looky there. That looks like it right here. And I'm going to need some brown. I could use this brown. Yeah, I guess that brown right there. So what I want is I want some really, or here's some stronger. I want some really strong dry paint. And I'm going to have my little brush handy for some of this. And now I have my bigger brush. Okay, so here we go. So I've sort of looked at this and thought it through, planned a little bit. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this. I think that's raw sienna there, even. Okay. Oh, see, that's way too strong, right? But we'll just suck some of it up, thin some of it out, pull it over here. And remember, this area is still wet from when I just worked with, lifting just a second ago. And so that area is still wet. And so I get a nice soft edge here, because this part has a soft edge. And I'm going to take my stronger brown here. This is sort of a, looks like a, it's a mixture that I made a brown with. Let's see what it's going to do, because it's important to just test it and see what it's going to do. I think it's going to be just about the right thing if I just leave it alone. Don't mess with it too much. I got those little fuzzy edges. Now let's come up here. Let's pull up a little bit more of this color. And let's make this crisp edge where there's a crease in the hat. Right there. Okay. I think I will deepen that just a little bit more. Just a touch of brown. Now you can see this shape right here. This goes in later when it's dry. But this little bit of blue doesn't. We just want a little tiny bit more color in the. Okay, there we go. Now let's pick up a little bit of blue. And just drop in a tiny bit right there. I think I'm gonna play with it just a little bit. Pull it out here. There. Didn't look like his. Something's not quite the same. I'll just pull a little more blue down here. I just feel like I want a little bit more depth and shape, and I'm doing it with the blue, which isn't an exact imitation, but there's just something not quite right here. Okay, I'm happy with that. So, see, we're not doing the band, and we're not doing this little thing right here. Those have to wait. Okay. So, another thing that I was looking at before we start on the skin, another thing that I was looking at was this area here on the pants. And I went back, I think after the video was over, and kind of put in this bit of a belt, which is actually going to contact with some more darks in here later. But I decided that this area right here needed to be, he's got a little more shadow area in there, and I would be happier with that if I had a little more shadow area in there, maybe a little bit more ultramarine too. So let's pick up more of this brown. And let's just add in and where this runs into this other color, I will just, that was already dry, I will just soften the edge. Okay, now I want to pull in a little bit of blue, and I don't even care if some of this bleeds. It's not what he has here, but I would be perfectly happy if some of this bled into here just a little bit. See, and you may want to do this entirely differently. I do not want you to feel like you're supposed to make all the same strokes that I'm making. What I am showing you is how I'm able to make some things happen. He didn't make them happen this way. Mel Stabin just brushed them in. He didn't have to think about it. One of the reasons he didn't have to think about it is this is like knowing how to write your ABCs, and then you make all kinds of words with them. He already has his ABCs of his strokes, the strokes that he likes to make. He's got a set of those. All of us artists do that have been painting for a while. And then he just naturally starts to create the guy and does those strokes without having to think about them the way that I've showed you here. So know that that's just part of the learning process. Yeah, I like this better like that with a little bit deeper area there. I really didn't have that as deep as his, but now I think it's deeper than his. And I have kind of a funny edge there, which I like. Okay, let's work on some skin now. I think that whatever he used for this area, he's also used for his skin, and he used it up in some other areas too, like right in here. He may have also used that to tone some of his greens. I don't think that's what I used, but I could have. If I didn't, maybe I will now. Okay, so I have here Quin Burnt Scarlet, which I think is very good for this. His piece probably Let's just test this out on something. Always have a scrap handy, right? Oops. Well, I did. There we go. Okay. Now, when that's dry, it's going to look a little too pinkish. So I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to pull a little raw sienna into it. Raw sienna is kind of on the, again, it's one of the duller, it's one of the quiet colors. I shouldn't call it a dull color. I should call it a quiet color, right? Because I don't want to defame it. Okay, so let's put a little raw sienna in with the scarlet. And he's got some darker areas there. Some of that's fairly, let's see what this does. All right, so we may have to add more to it later. And you see we have these green areas here. So what I'm going to do with those green areas is I'm going to modify them now and brown them down just by adding my mixture here. Now, I think I'll fade this out going this way. I'm using a littler brush here. So let's see what happens here. We've got skin color. He's got a highlight on his cheek. You could draw that in if you wanted to. His nose has got color until you get to the top of it where it's facing the light. So all of this, I don't want the edges to dry while I'm figuring it out, okay? You could do this in stages. Here's what I could do, okay? I could fade this out right here, okay? And then when that's dry, I can come back and work on top of it. In the meanwhile, I can use this. This comes across over the nose. And out over here. And actually, over here, that's his sunglasses. I think he needs a little more cheek left to him. I'm going to change this a little bit. There. Okay, so that's going to be the sunglass area, but remember, we're going to add more on top of this. So let's see, right here. This is still wet. Is this still wet? Yeah, this is still wet, so I'll continue on. But you could have stopped there and dried it. Stop, drop, and dry. Yeah. Okay, this can get mustache color on top of it. There's nothing wrong with this skin tone underneath. I think maybe he's got a goatee under there too. You know, it's just implied. Some of it's so implied that I don't know if it's there. Okay, I'll just fill this in. That's a little neat. You know, he wouldn't have played with that, been that careful with that. But there. Okay, there's our first layer of skin. I got the highlight on his nose a little bit too skinny compared to his. And quite frankly, yeah, well, I'm not going to be disappointed about it. In fact, this area right here, I'm going to lift that. You can see right here, he's got that. That's a highlight on a beard is what I think that is. Again, this is because this was done very loosely and just implied, it's harder to paint from. On the other hand, you don't have to get it just like this either. So let's look at the hands now. We're working with the same mixture. I just don't have room for it here in view. Okay. You know, that hand's got a little color on it. Not much, though. I tell you what, let's start here. This is sort of where the hand bends. So this part is a highlight. It's not a totally white highlight, but we'll do that later. So here we go. And we could just put a layer of color on the fingers, knowing that we're going to come back and add little things to it later. And I think we're going to need some pants color right there between that, where that little finger goes. Let's just go ahead and pull it down here onto this hand. And at this point, he has chosen, and I use the word chosen because it's really a very arbitrary. Oh, wait a minute. Let's just soften this edge here just the tiniest bit. Let's pull it up that way, just barely. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so he has chosen to soften this area and go lighter here. He wanted to keep this hand contrasting over this because he wanted to call your attention visually. It's not so much like I want you to see that hand because he's doing something important with it. He's not. He's just moving your eye around with having a little light right there. A little light over dark. So I'm making it maybe not quite as light because I'm being very fussy with this and probably painting this larger than what he did. We are probably painting this larger than what he did. There. So we've still got light fingers over dark. And we've got skin color. That's all very nice. That's very nice. Okay. What is going on here? And here's the thing. We're analyzing this extra hard because we don't have the original that he worked from. In fact, he worked from a guy sitting there on a bench. And he is so used to doing figures and so comfortable with them that, and according to the book, that when the guy got up and walked off, he was still able to finish it. So he didn't even have the guy there to look at for the whole time. I mean, that was somebody that wasn't modeling for him or something. It was just somebody sitting on a bench smoking a cigarette, I think, for a minute. All right. He probably had to sit and rest because he's a smoker. Okay, so I think that's a watch there, and I think this is still skin right here. This is part of his wrist, and there, I guess, is a cuff or something. I don't know. Color changes there. It's strange. Maybe he has a shirt under another shirt. And it's not like it's important whether he has a shirt under another shirt. I don't know why I'm even bothering you with it. Okay, so there's a bit of skin right there, I think. Although it's a little different color. It's more the color of this cuff. The color of this cuff is more like, oops, where'd it go? Is more like raw sienna. Well, let's just put a little of this down here. This is probably contaminated a little bit with the Quinn Burnt Scarlet. Okay, right there. Something like that. Okay. So, I wonder if we could come back and work on this hat. I don't know. Okay, we could. I've got some other color. This is a mixture. Don't ask me what it is now. I think it is. This is a mixture from last week, and I think that it is of phthalo green and burnt umber. Yeah, something like that. Or pick up a little of this. Okay. We just want a little extra shape right there. There. Okay. Let's try. This is some burnt umber. It might have some burnt scarlet into it. I'm just looking for a brown. And we'll go ahead and put that in. Oh, we got to finish the brim too. See that brim? That's some of the same color on the brim that we have up here. And there's a little bit pulls down this way. And this isn't white. You see this part of see this white streak out here? This needs some color on it too. It needs to dull down. Okay, so let's come back over to this, because this is what we were working with. Something like that. Let's just, well, that isn't quite the right color, is it? No, not at all. Okay, well, all we're going to do is we're going to blend this back up into there and pull it down like that a little bit, and we're going to live with it. I could have put a little bit more raw sienna in there, and that probably would have been what we needed. Let's try that mixture with a little raw sienna in it. It's about half raw sienna. So this needs a little dirt on it, you know. This isn't a pristine hat anyway. It's dirt or it's shadow or who knows. So let's soften that edge and pull it down there. There we go. There we go. Just keep some bright whites there though. And then let's take a little of that raw sienna mixture. There we go. Now, see, you can still see it, but it doesn't stand out so much. He's got the bottom part of this not blending into the background. Let's do that. Let's follow his lead. He knows what he was doing. There's a little more raw sienna, because that's what this is looking like to me here. There we go. That's actually going to dry pretty dull. All right. His little thing isn't as dark as mine. Maybe I'll just add a little water there. And squeeze the brush out and suck a little of it up. There we go. Okay. I've got a little thing there that a sparkle, and this sparkle looks like it's part of the hat because it's so light. So I need to get rid of the sparkle. Just there. Okay, now it looks like, I don't know what it looks like. Anyway, okay. There we go there. Now, let's look at the shirt for a while. Oh, I want to put that back in. That is our, that is this mixture. It's brown and, it is burnt umber and ultramarine to make something that looks more like raw umber. Don't get raw umber mixed up with raw sienna. Raw umber is just not burnt. So it's not as reddish yellow. It's closer to a gray. There. Okay. So let's pay some attention to the shirt. Oh, I need a bigger brush for that. Here, I'll go back to, this is a 12, but a 10 will be just perfect. We've got gray stripes. Which did he put in first, the blue stripe or the gray stripe? I don't have a clue, but it was probably the gray. And here we have a repeat of the green area. And this is more gray with a little more bluishness. So he just played around and had a real good time designing this shirt. See, he's got little spots on it and stuff. It just makes good design. This little spot that he created right here, which he again was being loose, but that little spot there makes, that's another dot. You know, anytime you got those little dark dots somewhere in a painting, it it just does something. There are a lot of people who use, when they do landscapes, they've got little birds in the sky or little birds sitting on the power lines because they, there's just those little pops of dark. I mean, it's not that they care about birds as much as that they, not that they don't, but they want that device. Okay, let's see. So I've got that raw umber looking stuff. Over here I've got some blue with some of the brown into it, which made a, oh, it made a gray. It's kind of a greeny gray. This is more, this looks a little more on the warm side, a little more browny. Let's take some of that and put some of that over here. I think I want a little more burnt umber into it. You know, this is not critical. It's not a big deal. It's just he's such a damn good painter. I would like to get a little bit closer to what he does. Okay, see that's a little bit on the warm side, but it's almost a gray. Well, maybe it is a gray. It's hard to decide. Okay, so I want this thinned out a lot because I'm going to use it. Let's see. You know, again, he certainly didn't have an outline drawn down here. Here's probably some shadows in the shirt that aren't even part of the shirt design, but they're done with the same color exactly. Oops, I need to pick up a little more color. And here he's got a little bit. And the thing is that it's not all the same value. Now, this isn't either. But I'm going to squeeze out my brush and see, this is very, very wet, juicy stuff. I'm going to make some of this a bit paler than what I have it now. There. That's the thing. You can nearly always put down color that is heavier if you've got the color mixed right, and you can modify it after you've got it down. This has got 2 layers of color on it. So I'm going to put the one. And then as I move over here, let's get a couple of stripes in there. And then let's pick up something that's got a little more blue in it. Oh dear, did I get too dark here? Yeah, I did. Because remember, I was going to do this in 2 layers. Oh dear. Well, we'll just, oh dear. What now? Well, we need a little of this color too. Comes over here. Oh, I redrew this. There's a little spot there between his arm and his shirt, because he's skinnier. This was probably painted a long time ago when people were thinner. Besides, the guy's a smoker. Yuck. Okay, here we go. Well, what do we do here? Well, let's get it wet and let's pull a little of that color up. And then let's come up this way with it, because this is the shadow side. Pick up a little bit more of the bluey gray. There's an extra shadow added right here that we want to do after it's dry. I had some stripes, and see, there was a couple of nice white spots there that I've lost, and that I can't fix. I could, though, put this in. This thing right here, as long as I don't touch this other wet spot. Okay. See, because a lot of what he's painting here is really more about design than it is about anything else. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I think I'll pull that up there, so I'm not using quite the right color. There. Okay, let's let that dry. And we could work on the background some. Hold on. And you might get something out of just practicing some of these strokes, by the way. And the more you work like this, the more you get to where you can work loose like this. I really needed to follow his stuff before I do some of my stuff to loosen up, because I'm not that good at this. Now what I have here is I have a small brush that is loaded with black. And I'm going to I'm going to work on this area here. And see, there's some outlining down here. He did some actual outlining. He played with his brush, putting some of those wrinkles in. You know, little swirly, playful thing going on there. Okay. So, let's just do a little of this. I'm going to skip a spot or two. You want the line to go light or thin. And I do believe that I have my brush so loaded that my line's a little thick. Okay, but when we get over here, we're going to give him a little shadow definition here, so that it doesn't look like that's a leg going all the way over there. That was kind of bad. When I traced it, I think I made it worse. In fact, right there, I took up some of my paint so that it doesn't continue right there, tangentially, right there into the tips of the fingers. I didn't want that. And let's add this belt. Careful, because that's still wet. Okay, there. I think he's got a little bit of drawing on the other side too. You know, that's just, some of that's just a little thicker than what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the paint out of my brush, but I've still got some in the tip. So let's see if I can add in a little thin line down here. Yeah, there we go. That's much better. You want the brush with enough paint on it that it will flow. I'm gonna wipe some of that out so that it will flow off the brush, but not so much that you get a thick line. Let's just do that. Just because. Okay. All right, let's look at the background. You know, that's what's so great about this. I can do another demo or two of other things, and I've still got the color that I started this out with. Of course, I don't think I got enough of it, but, you know. So let's make some more of this dark green. This was the phthalo green, which is just, I mean, look how powerful that is. That could just eat your lunch in a heartbeat. Okay, and burnt umber. We could have used some of the Quinburnt Scarlet in that too. Oh, I got too much burnt umber. I killed the phthalo green with burnt umber. I can't believe they actually killed that phthalo green. One of the reasons for that, though, is that burnt umber is very opaque and phthalo green is highly transparent. So even though transparent colors are in some ways stronger, they can get covered up by opaques. You know, as you're mixing them, but it has the effect of covering some of the color. So even though I didn't use, even though phthalo green is a stronger color, it's not dominating the mixture. It looks like it because I've got it washed up here on the side, but it's not. I don't think. Well, maybe we better check. I shouldn't be such a know-it-all all the time, huh? Let's see what this does. Well, that is greener than I thought. Look at that. I don't want it to be quite that. It's not too bad. I tell you what, I kept saying that some Quinburnt Scarlet in this would be really good. So let's just do that. Because it's a red. And that red counteracts that green. Of course, burnt umber is basically an orange. All right, that's the color. See, it's just a little bit duller. We've got all this stuff going on in the background. And not to mention, we haven't done all of this down here. And the finish on the shirt. All right. So I've got over 30 minutes on the video before I started this part. So we will definitely go one more week. I'm already working on stuff to mail out next. All right, let's... This could be a cactus or something. I don't know what it is. But what we wound up with is a really strong dark. And it blends into his belt. Value-wise. Okay, let's do that. And let's come over on this side and see what all we need to do. We do have a few strong darks of this color. And maybe I don't know if it's time to put them in here, but I will. We'll see. If this doesn't work, then I'll tell you later you shouldn't have done it. See, I think this is another cactus. And probably, I'm actually making something that's not in yours. This is probably cropped more like that in your drawing. So you may not want to put that in there, or you might. Yeah, that was dumb of me. I told you not to do that. Okay. This is the same stuff. I'm going to put some over in here. It's with a little of that raw sienna. Mostly, I'm just thinning it down a little bit. And I'm going to put this shape in over here, which is actually right here. And hope that's dry enough. Okay, we did this. See, and then he actually painted some shapes around rather than layering one on top of another, which I think is quite interesting that he did that there. Oh, over here we need a lot more stuff going on. What is all this? Yeah, that could use a little more yellow in that. Let's just take that mixture and put a little Quin Gold into it. When in doubt, add Quin Gold. Or don't. Oh, yeah, I had one other thing I want to show y'all too. Okay. See, this over in here is kind of light. You know, I think I'll just brush a little more of that over in here. And I think that I'll just add a little bit of something into it. Oh, dear. How about some raw sienna again? Just make it a little stronger like that. And that's still wet. I can't do more there. Well, I had something else that I wanted to show, and I forgot about it. So I'm going to do it next. And this can be drying for next week. Okay. Well, now let's do a little bit more. So, if I had a lot of Quin Burnt Scarlet, well, here, I've got, find the right plate. Quin Burnt Scarlet is too strong by itself. But if I put some pretty strong raw sienna into it, yeah, maybe a little burnt umber too. I don't know. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. Okay, that needs a little more Quin Burnt Scarlet in it. Here, let's move that over here. There we go. Okay, that'll do. Well, it's still a little too red. Well, let's start here. I have no idea what kind of plant this is. Maybe it's not a plant at all. Maybe it's just dirt. We don't know. Okay, so I'm going to add some just raw sienna in here. Fill that in. That's too dark. See, there's a few colored twinkles coming through. And, you know, this is into wet paint, and we're getting fuzzy edges. It looks kind of like coral growing there or something. That's as good a choice as any. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to pick up some of my really dark green again. That's too wet. I can't work on it right now. Never mind. Okay. So I'm going to save this mix for next week, too. You know, I just like a little bit of that somewhere over here. Hey, how about another splatter? Yeah, there we go. Okay. It won't show up a whole lot when it's dry. It'll add interest without being too stark. That's probably going to require some tempering of some kind. That'll be interesting. What should I do here? Should I leave the coral edges, or should I just... Yeah, let's do this, because this isn't the right color anyway. I'm going to have to add to it. Because I don't always get things just like I want them the first time. And that's the thing. You can just layer a glaze on top of that. Same thing if you were working with acrylics or oils. You can glaze and change the color. It's just a matter of getting comfortable with the idea, because when we were little kids in school, we never learned that one. Okay, so I was going to show something else, and I have just what I need to show it with. Because Here's the back of some old paper that I can't do a lot with anyway. Let's just say that you were working on something that had a big area in it. Maybe you're going to put stuff on top of this, but you've got a big area, okay? And you want it to be interesting. One of the ways you could do it, I'll just do it with greens. Gee, we've got all these different greens here. I never even got that one wet today. Boy, that's bright. Okay. Is that I want, as I'm working on this though, or what this is going to wind up is, it's supposed to be this solid rectangle. So I want to make some color changes in it, but I don't want them to be screaming at you, because if they are, it may break this up into pieces. So all I'm going to do, am I on? Yeah, okay. You need juicy paint. You need a lot of juicy paint, big brush. This really isn't a big enough brush. Here, let's get this one. There, now we got a big brush. Okay. So let's just say that I want this to be more interesting. Well, what I'll do is, I'll shift my greens some. Not too much, but some. And I'll let them run together as I come along here. The main thing too, I want to keep the value on the greens similar, but I'm changing the, don't worry about the hair, that'll pop off when it's dry. But I want to change the hue. So here I've got this dark one. Well, I just need more water in it. So let's just say I'm going to paint something entirely different on top of this. But here's the thing. You see how this is going to be more interesting? Let's take a little more of this green and add it in down here. There we go. Maybe I could even put a streak of this up here if it's not drying yet. But I don't want it to be too dark. I want it to keep about the same value, but shift. You can use this in all kinds of situations. It's the same thing, you know, we do the thing with the line. I've demonstrated the line, I don't know, 40 million times. But how one way to make a line not boring. In fact, we just did this with the Cowboy's boots last week, is to change the color, not so much the value, unless you have a situation where it would be appropriate to change the value. Let's see, we could even, I'm going to pick up something really loud here. Well, that's almost too loud. Maybe when it's dry it wouldn't be too bad. Practice this some. I bet you've got some scraps, some pieces of painting that you're not happy with. Even try this on top of something you've painted to see if you can improve it. You know, something that you were going to trash, just play on top of it. But you remember what we did with the boots here, where we shifted color as we came across. I mean, the boot shadow, and then in the boot too. You know, I talked about that. Well, this is the same thing. See, instead of one solid green, which would get boring, you see there's just those little bits. Now your viewer isn't going to look at it and say, oh, I just love those little shifts of green. Well, they might if they're an artist, but if they're not, they're probably not going to notice that. They're just going to know they like it, though. That's all you can hope for, huh? Okay. We'll finish them up next week.